Hello everybody, my name is Jason Mock and thank you for watching. Today we're going to perform a feminist critique on Chaucer's The Wife of Bath.
Considered a modern English masterpiece, The Canterbury Tales by Geoffrey Chaucer delivers many considerable arguments when looking at The Wife of Bath's tale and prologue. While many literary critics view her largely outspoken attitude as a ploy to deliver comic satire by Chaucer, others further this criticism by stating that her character can be seen as an anti-feminist or simply another stock character. Yet, even though some critics argue this, I, on the other hand, argue towards that she was indeed a realistic character and that Chaucer appears more feminist than not. Yet in order to validate these claims, one must first look at the treatment of women during the mid to late 14th century and then thoroughly analyze her prologue and tale from a feminist perspective.
Before diving straight into The Wife of Bath's prologue and tale, it is important to first view the treatment of women during the 14th century. During this time, women were definitely depicted as inferior and submissive in the eyes of men. After noting this, author R.D. Eaton goes on to state in his peer-reviewed publication entitled Gender, Class, and Conscience in Chaucer that male dominance in medieval England occupied both the public and physical space in society. Due to this, Eaton further argued that women were not allowed to leave their confined spaces unless they were under, quote, strict conditions of escort, end quote, appropriately dressed, and did not fully express their true personality. Author Stefano Superno then goes on to state in his article regarding gender in The Wife of Bath that male authority took church writings, interpreted them towards their own liking in order to further solidify male dominance through the justification of God. He also stated that marriage was considered inferior to perpetual virginity.
When viewing The Wife of Bath's prologue, Chaucer's character states her actual name as Alison. The spelling of this name really just depends on the person who translated his work. Anyway, Alison definitely uses women's sexuality in the prologue as power against her husband's. She also contradicts the submissive and passive stereotype as woman as seen in the historical context of the previous slide. Her prologue then thoroughly discusses her 5 marriages, and then she even goes on to state in line 195 how 3 of them were good and 2 of them were bad. Some beat her, some she actually loved, but Alison welcomed more as well. Furthermore, she certainly uses biblical references to validate her unorthodox interpretation of the Bible regarding virginity, the oppression of women, and her own insights she learned through life experiences. She also criticized the archaic image of virginity. Perhaps most important, though, Alison also challenges the dominance of male authority numerous times by showing the dominance and power women can have over their husbands. Through doing this, it seems as if she gives hints to fellow wives on how to gain the upper hand. Noticeably shorter than the prologue, her tale involves a powerful knight who rapes a maiden. Due to this, the knight is then summoned to Queen Guinevere and the ladies of the court, where they then order him to find out what women most desire in the world. If he does not do this within 1 year, they say he will be beheaded. The knight then receives various answers from a multitude of women until he meets an old ugly hag surrounded by fairies who promises to tell him the answer in exchange for marriage.
The knight is then told by the hag that women wish to have sovereignty over their husbands. Upon hearing this, the knight returns back to the court where the queen and ladies agree to this answer. They also fulfill the hag's request for the knight to honor his agreement to marriage. Once saved and married to the hag, the old ugly hag then asked if he would prefer her to be faithful and ugly or faithless and beautiful, which the knight then lets her decide. This scene right here is surely the climax of this tale and displays the sovereignty women can have over her men as she so openly discusses in her prologue. Finally, the old hag, or loathy lady as some call her, magically transforms and becomes both faithful and beautiful, which then, of course, leads them to living happily ever after.
Once reading the prologue and tale for yourselves, it's definitely clear that Chaucer makes use of irony by reversing the social norms of the era, where women held sovereignty over men during a time when medieval England consisted of a patriarchal society. This in turn causes a major shift in power dynamics and perfectly reflects back to the central topics in the prologue in relation to the domestic violence, marriage, and the sovereignty women want over men. Meanwhile, Allison seemed to represent herself as the old woman, whereas the knight became a representative of man, of course.
Moreover, Allison also shows feminist qualities through her outspoken arguments in relation to the gender inequalities that were occurring during the historical context of both Chaucer's life and 14th century England. Surely a woman speaking in this matter as well would be viewed as either eccentric or out of the norm during this era. Now, in order to show any sort of credibility to these arguments, since I am by no means a Chaucer expert, it is essential to incorporate professional and scholarly research from actual Chaucer experts in order to further validate this feminist critique on the wife of Bath. The first to back these claims is actually author Richard Husser, who states in a scholarly article entitled Allison Takes Exception, Medieval Pleading and the Wife of Bath, that her prologue, and I quote, challenges the misogynist teachings of clerical authority. Next, in another scholarly publication called What Women Want, Mimesis and Gender in Chaucer's Wife of Bath's Prologue and Tale, author Anne Taggart provides a professional insight towards Chaucer's imitation of gender by stating that Chaucer displays the, quote, image of female sovereignty as mastery over men, end quote. Author Stefano Superno then further states in his article how Allison's story provides an allegorical response on how male dominance put women in disadvantaged situations, which can certainly be seen as well. He also backs up these our arguments as well by stating that Allison uses her life experiences along with the Bible to oppose the concepts of authority.
Despite all this, Chaucer certainly displayed elements of both satire and subservience in her character at times as well. He first uses satire in relation to her physical image and sexuality. You see, even though Allison used her sexuality as power against men, Chaucer also paints her as an old and unattractive woman in the eyes of men. She also contradicts her own feminist rhetoric at times as well. Meanwhile, Husser's article also confirms this by stating that Chaucer masterfully blended real concerns and comedy in her character.
So after all, was the wife of Bath really just another stock character like the Pilgrims of the Canterbury Tales? Well, in short, no. Actually, not at all. The wife of Bath goes way beyond a simple social stereotype while delivering a deep allegorical response toward the social concerns and needs of women during her era. Husser further supports this in his publication by stating, quote, audience expectations about a character drawn from stereotypes of disruptive feminine behavior by just opposing Allison's outrageous plea with a central structure for communal order, end quote. Taggart also describes her character as, and I quote, a psychically complex and shrewd player in the field of social and economic competition. The article The Wife of Bath and the Mark of Adam by Elin Hansen validates her realistic traits as well when comparing Allison's prologue to the writings of late medieval author Christine de Pizan and 20th century feminist writer Simone de Beauvoir. Furthermore, was Chaucer really a feminist of his time? Though still heavily debated by professionals due to Chaucer's heavy use of satire, the arguments presented provides more evidence for yes than no. Chaucer's use of satire in general makes it hard, if not impossible, to concretely state an answer. Yet when viewing the wife of Bath from a feminist approach, Hansen further argued in her article that she can be seen as a, quote, sign of Chaucer's empathy with real women and as a realistic, historical, plausible foil to the idealized views of femininity found in prescriptive texts of the period. Even her lofty prologue signifies the power and importance of her character's response to the real-world concerns of women during Chaucer's time. Though certainly not perfect, her liberal insights and radical expressiveness towards male dominance can open one's eyes toward a more archaic form of feminism during an era when most women were essentially trapped within the confines of their own home. So in all, The Wife of Bath's prologue and tale delivers a bold and allegorical response towards the inequalities of women and the power women can have over the men during this era of extreme patriarchy. Meanwhile, her outspoken and controversial arguments totally contradict the typical nature of womanly attitudes declared by both man and church. It is indeed in these respects alone that can make The Wife of Bath stand out as an early icon of feminism after all. Alright, so this concludes the following presentation. For anyone interested in gaining further insight to this topic, a more thorough version of the transcript is provided below. Once again, thank you guys so much, and it's been an honor working with each and every one of you.